sometimes I'll walk into a women's bathroom and they look at me, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm a predator. I'm not gonna go in there and like be kicked out or looked at as if I'm a predator because like I'm coming off masculine presenting. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes I enter a male designated space and they look at me as well. So it's like me trying to figure out what is the safest place for me, but also where am I most comfortable, and trying to balance those things out.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Queerly Blax Show. I'm your host, Ashley, and I'm so happy you came by. The Queerly Blax Show aims to normalize the everyday existence of Black, LGBTQIA+ individuals through an interview-style series with regular folks like you and me. So every week, a new guest shares their story and unique perspective on their existence as an LGBTQIA+ individual. Thank you for tuning in, and make sure you subscribe, download, set your reminders to the podcast so you never miss an episode. Enjoy the show. Welcome back to another episode of the Queerly Blax Show. We have a very special guest with us today. We have Key in the building. Key, go ahead, introduce yourself to the people. Let them know what you're about.
Hey, Key Lucas, currently like living in DC, do some teaching for my profession, but from California, from HU, that's what I've met you.
Yeah,
so.
Don't say, tell the people where you went to school now.
Gotta rep HU, the real
100%,
HU, of course.
100%. That's right. Yeah. All right, cool. Well, let's get right into it. So, I think, I obviously knew you for a while, and I think that your journey to becoming yourself has been super duper cool, and I definitely want to talk about, some of the great things about, being transgender and going through your journey, and then also some of the not so great things that, people can learn from and that can help people. So let's start off with just, from the beginning, like, when did you know that, you were different, or that something felt different to you?
I wouldn't say I know that felt different. I wouldn't say it's that. I just think that, like, kind of like you said, it's just kind of been a journey kind of coming into myself. So I think that it wasn't that I felt different. It was just like I always kind of knew that, like, I wasn't me yet. You know what I'm saying? So it's just kind of like everybody's trying to find out who they are, trying to find their identity, going on their own journey. And I just had to keep peeling back my layers to figure out what's not right. You know what I'm saying? What are the things? And so, like, me taking the steps to get here is like me kind of coming into myself. Like, so it wasn't something I woke up and I was like, oh, I'm different, I'm like this. It was really like, oh no, like, this is Key, like, this is who I am. And so, like, this is where I'm supposed to be and living life. Yeah.
Got you. So how young were you as you started that process of discovery?
Basically, like, no, I didn't always identify as trans. I didn't start my like actual identifying as trans till like a few years ago, when I really like was able to step into that. I growing up, you know, I was definitely a tomboy. You know what I'm saying? I always hung around my brothers. When I got to college, I was able to kind of like really start figuring out like who I am, and kind of like undoing some of the stuff that I did like growing up. You kind of have to like conform to like how you're growing up. So around college, I was masculine presenting. Like, I was a masculine presenting lesbian at that point. I was attracted to women. All throughout college and pretty much into my adulthood, until I really started like really unpacking, because it still didn't feel like I was me yet, you know? So I really had to start unpacking that. It actually took me going to like therapy and really like digging in to figure out what it was that I needed, and what it was that like I was kind of afraid to kind of become or like accept.
Yeah. What were some?
And so now I'm here.
Oh, good. What were some of the challenges? So like you're going through that process and like trying to kind of understand it. What were some of the things, like some of the thoughts that you were having in terms of coming of age? Was it were some of the challenges related to judgment potentially, or had an understanding of views that other people had that kind of made you a little bit afraid? Like,
Yeah.
what was that journey like in your mind?
It's hard to like kind of continuously undo something. Like, and even in the simplest way, you going off, say you're going off to college, and like your parents expect you to like go in a doctorate, you know what I'm saying? And you decide you want to do something else. Like, yeah, there's this idea that people have of who you are, you know, and they care about that idea of who you are. And so, like, it's hard to kind of like detach yourself from that, because then there's a fear of like, oh well, if I detach myself from the idea of who you thought I was, are you no longer going to care about that? You know what I'm saying? Like, are you no longer going to care about me and who I am? You also, like, I'm Black, I grew up in a church. Like, it was a lot of undoing you have to do in terms of like what is acceptable, what is God asking me to do, like what do I believe in, you know what I'm saying? So it's like it's a lot of undoing that I had to do to kind of allow myself to be me and comfortable inside of being me and not being afraid of that. I think that's really been a lot of my work. It's just not being afraid of like the external stuff, and people that like, I don't know, like people are such opinionated around things that really don't have to do with them. Like,
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
yeah,
Like you have
totally. I
such an
totally get it.
opinion
Yeah,
around like my life and what makes me happy. And I don't really understand what that has to do with you. So it was really about like me kind of tuning everything else out and really like, how do I align with myself and really like live my life so that I actually want to live my life, right? Because that's
yeah,
the other part people don't understand. Like, when you're not aligned with yourself and you're not allowing yourself to be yourself, what you're actually doing is like steering yourself down the road of like depression and anxiety. Like, that's not a happy way that I was living. I wasn't happy with myself. And it's
yeah.
just like, would I keep going down that road to appease everyone else around me? Or would I make the change to actually make myself happy? You know what I
Right.
mean?
Oh, 100%, 100%. I think it's interesting. I like the kind of all encompassing like undoing, because that's truly what it is. There's all this assignment that happens, and then when you kind of come into your own, you want to back out of it and like, okay, I got to undefine all of this again. So I want to talk about the difference between gender assignment and your
Mm-hmm.
body, right? So like talk about the difference between like, okay, genetic assignment, okay, born female, but then like my body feels different.
Yeah, I mean that always comes up as like the major debate, but like there's so much again that people have to undo around their concept of like actually what is biological sex, right? Yeah, there's male and female, but like no one actually talks about like also the things that are all in between that, right? A lot more people than people think are born intersex, right? So there's always been a variation in terms of like humanness and how you're born. It's not everything's not so black and white in the binary in which we try to adhere to, even inside of biological sex. But again, most people adhere to the idea that yeah, you're either born female or you're born male. That's nothing we can change according to like the way that we are systematically
Right.
assigned things. So that's why in terminology people might say assigned female at birth, right?
Yeah.
But gender is a construct. Like we kind of made up sex too, but we definitely completely made up gender. And we said that this is a boy, this is a girl, and these are all the things that go with being a boy, and these are all the things that go again with being a girl. And like we made that up, just like we constructed race around this is black, this is white, this is what it means to be black, this is what it means to be white. Like, so when it came to me and gender, like I had already been kind of like like the concept of even being a tomboy, right? That's already a deconstruction of like, oh, I'm a tomboy because I'm not a boy, but I like to do boyish things, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that like there's all these words and
Mm-hmm.
languages we've always had to try and pinpoint someone that didn't adhere to whatever binds or like the
Yeah.
binaries that people were
Mm-hmm.
supposed to be in. Um, but like the fluidity has always existed to me. Like, you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Even beyond like our current language, whether we're calling it non-binary, calling it gender fluid, gender queer, it's always existed, whether there was a name for it or not,
Yeah.
throughout history. But yeah, gender is very different from sex. And so therefore, like someone's gender identity has honestly nothing to do with their biological sex. They don't have to equate. Um, and so like my feelings about my body, right? They may have something to do with my gender. They may have something to do with the sex that I've assigned, but it's like my personal choice and my first personal feelings about my body. There are trans people that don't feel the need to like, you know what I'm saying? They're okay inside of their bodies. And there's trans
Mm-hmm.
people that feel like their body is not theirs, right? Everybody's going through their own journey. There's not one encompassing story to being trans, but I do think that the all-encompassing idea that is deconstructing everything that we know about it. Like,
Yeah.
because again, if we made this thing up, then obviously there's some things that's missing, right? If
Yeah.
we can all acknowledge that, like, we made up the idea that pink is for girls and blue is for boys. Like, there's some things
Mm-hmm.
in there that we made up along the way,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's okay if we don't go with that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So then for you, the switch from because I Instagram stalked you. I just kind of went back through all your stuff on there, right? I think it was about like 2019. You kind of came out as like they them like I've had these conversations in private, the people who are closest to me, we've talked about this, but now publicly I want to bring that to everyone, and I want everyone to acknowledge and respect those things. And there was one comment, I think it might have been a family member of yours, that was like, I totally respect this, but I don't know what it means.
Yeah.
So talk about that, where people, it's not that they have an issue with it at all, but they just don't understand how to assimilate or how to be respectful. They don't really know what it means.
I think that it's definitely a reality, because like I said, like, the terminology is changing. Of course, like, in today's age, we've come up with so many words and labels and terms for these things that aren't if they aren't associated with the queer world, like, inside of this thing, inside of
Yeah.
Queerly Black, of course, these are things that are constantly in our minds, and we're learning and trying to, like, digest and change the way that we speak about things. But if no one really if that's not inside of their norm world, or
Mm-hmm.
degrees of association, of course they don't know. A lot of people in my family, yeah, that was completely not
Mm-hmm.
using they them pronouns, made no sense. It's just like, I don't even know how to, like, input it into my language. Like, I don't even know how to make that work inside of my mouth. And it's just like, I get that. I
Mm-hmm.
get that. But, like, for me, when it comes to, like, me and, like, people trying to get my pronouns or even understand my identity, like, for me, what I'm looking for, or what I have a feel for, is, like, at the root of it, is their love and is their willingness to try
Mm-hmm.
to understand. Like, you may not get it. You know what
It's
I'm
big.
saying? We can have 1,000 conversations
Mm-hmm.
inside of it, but, like, are you actually trying to understand? Because there are people that say, I don't get it, and want to understand. And there are people that say, I don't get it, and never want to get it. And
Yeah.
those are two different things, right?
Yeah.
So, like, as I'm kind of going through my journey, I'm starting to figure out, like, what's what. Like, yeah, there's some people who's like, yeah, I don't get that, and they don't want to. And at
Mm-hmm.
that point, like, well, am I starting to hit my wall with you? You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But there are people who don't get it, and, like, they just don't get it. But I know that they're trying. I know that they're trying to, like, take their steps to make it make sense.
Yeah.
But so it's all kind of touch and go, and it's person by person to me. Like, it's
Mm-hmm.
no kind of like black and white. If you don't use my correct pronouns, I'm not dealing with you. Because, like, for me, life isn't that black and white. Like, do I prefer for people to, like, really talk to me and speak about me in the way that, like, I need them to, and, like, honor and respect who I am? Of course. Is everyone in my life able to make that switch currently? No. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
So what does that look
No.
like? So it's, you go into a family setting, and everyone's used to calling you one thing, and then you've made the transition to your new pronouns, and then they still just, they're like, girl, come here, or they're saying
Yeah,
things. And to your
that's
point
the
about love being in it, but then, like, at what point do you ever feel like there is a level of, like, you just, you're just completely not trying to get this, or is there a level of empathy and kind of um grace that you give, because for 20 years or 22 years or 25 years they've called you a certain name or certain pronoun, and now it's such their nature to just call you that, and in their mind they're like, I only see you once a year, twice a year. Like, there's all these things that are like the reasons why they can't get it right. Do you kind of handle those situations a little differently?
Yeah, it's really hard to balance it. Like you kind of said, like, I used to, early on, I would be, like, so upset, but then I had to, like, really take in what you said, which is just like, they've known me by these pronouns for this amount of my life. And before I even, whether or not I felt like I belonged to those pronouns or to that identity, I didn't have the words to articulate it yet. So of course, like for this time, like that's how they've known me. So as long as it took for me to kind of come into myself, it took me 20 odd years
Mm-hmm.
to come into myself. It's going to take them also a little bit of time to undo and try and see me as I am. But like for me, it's also like at a certain point, you got to stop seeing me for who I was all those 20
Mm-hmm.
something years and start seeing me for who I am right now.
Yeah.
Like that's when the change starts happening. Like that's what I'm looking for people in my life to start doing. Like as I get further in my thing, I need you to like see me as I am right now, because then you'll be able to see like this is a difference. This isn't who I was
Right.
5 years ago. This isn't who I was 6 years ago. Even though I know you love that person, you love me now, but like you got to
Yeah.
see where I am right now.
Yeah, for sure.
You know what I mean?
So as you so you make that, so you make the transition, you go from tomboy to now my pronouns are, I identify a different way. Um Socially, there's like all these changes that occur for you personally. What was that journey for you? Like everything from bathrooms to clothes to hair to the decision to take medication or not take medication, and the transition, kind of how did that walk me through that journey for you, like how did, if you can remember, like how each thing kind of started to transform for you.
So it's definitely like a step by step thing for me, because like you don't really know until you're in it. Like I can do as much talking about it. I did it like
Mm-hmm.
before you kind of like go into it and try and like medically transition, you got to meet with your therapist and we have all these conversations, and they're like to try and prepare you for all the changes that come, but you
So
don't
when
really
you so
know until
medically,
they're here.
yeah, so for medically, is it, when you go to the doctors to get a prescription, do they require you to get counseling or to see a therapist first, or can you get it without um, seeing a therapist?
In some places, yeah. In DC, they actually like it's actually I really like living here, because like through Whitman Walker Health and like a couple of other places, like you can really, they do very well with like trans care services. So like I talked through it with my therapist, but like she didn't actually have to sign anything for me because I was able to go through Whitman Walker and like really talk through things. There is definitely a process, but it didn't feel that difficult for me,
Okay.
no. But they do like suggest you talk through it, like so
Okay.
they're like they'll check in with you like, hey, have you thought about this, have you talked through this? And so me saying like, yeah, I've been in therapy definitely helped the process along.
Yeah.
But yeah, like each step is different. Like I feel like I am re engaging with the world like in
Mm-hmm.
a new way, because even along inside of my transition, like as my body changes, as like my physical transition changes, a lot of the things that like I was used to in my life have also changed. Like we used to play flag football
Right.
together,
Yeah.
right? So over the summer, I had somebody reach out like, "Yo, I want you to come out and play flag football. Like, yeah, come join." It was a women's flag football league though, so I'm going and
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, "Yeah, I'll come try it out." But when I hit the coaches up, like, "Yo, I would love to play, but hey, I'm actually like, I take testosterone. I'm trans. Is this gonna work?" You know what I'm saying? Like, they ain't really hit me back to come back. You know what I'm saying? So
Gotcha.
it's
Yeah.
like all these things that like I could do. I'm learning like, oh, okay, so like there's new things. The bathroom, like
Mm-hmm.
it's a different experience. It really is trying to like assess my level of comfortability and where I am, but also trying to be cognizant of like I don't want to put myself in a dangerous situation. Like sometimes I'll walk into a woman's bathroom and they look at me. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
I'm a predator. I'm not gonna go in there and like be kicked out or looked at as if I'm a predator because like I'm coming off masculine presenting.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And sometimes I enter a male designated space and they look at me as well. So it's like me trying to figure out what is the safest place for me, but also where am I most comfortable, and trying to balance those things out. So yeah, everything is kind of like changing them, like this little baby masculine hair, facial hair that I'm growing. I go to my barber now. Like before, he was just giving me, my regular cut. I've been going there for some years now. Now I'm growing facial hair. And I have to look at him like, yo, can you line me up? And he like, all right, you know what I'm saying? So it's like the little small shit, like as shit changes, you have to like re-engage with the world a little bit differently. I feel blessed to feel comfortable inside of these changes so far. Like, yeah, there's been some shit that like hit, but like I am privileged in the fact that like I have been able to have a safe transition.
Yeah.
At this point, like I have a job, I have health care, I can pay through for the things that I need, I can take care of myself. And I understand that that's not actually the experience that a lot of trans people go through. So I acknowledge my privilege inside of this thing, inside of my journey, and inside of like this conversation, because this isn't the story for everybody um going along in this way.
Yeah, no, it totally. And I think it's admirable, I think on all fronts when people are able to just be themselves, it's awesome to see it. You're a teacher.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I know we talked briefly about this before, but talk about how that is for you as a teacher, because obviously and you teach in high school, right?
I teach middle
Middle
school.
school.
I teach a K-8 school. So yeah, right now I'm working in the middle school.
Middle school. So even more so, this is a super critical time for kids, right? And so for you, how's that interaction? Because this is also a part of the systematic assignment of female, male, girl, boy, blue, yellow, or not blue, yellow being neutral, and then pink. There's all this stuff that they've categorized, and then what if it's they start calling you Miss Kiera versus whatever you refer to at school or in the world. How do you have those conversations with the kids, or do you talk to them about it at all, or is it do you have to engage parents ever, like just the journey of being a teacher, from the kids to the parents to administrators and all of that? Like, how's that for you?
So again, I actually find myself to be like, I'm grateful for the situation I'm in and the school that I work at, because they do support me inside of my identity. I have full support from my administration. Like, when I'm teaching honestly, it's crazy. Kids are easier than adults are. Like, you tell a kid
Yeah.
what it is, and they're like, "Oh, okay, cool." You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
when I first changed my like pronouns and like identify as non-binary, I was actually teaching like doing an apprentice teachership with first graders, right? And so like this is my first time teaching, and I'm walking in and I'm telling them like, "Oh, don't call me Miss, don't call me Mister, call me Mix, like MX," right? And they're like, "Oh, okay, Mix Lucas, cool." And then so like, but you're teaching them, and like, uh, for me, a lot of people choose to like make that choice of like, am I keeping my private life private, or do I bring my personal things into the classroom? And for me, like something like a transition is actually very like external, it's very
Yeah,
physical.
you can
Like they
see it.
see it happening as you go. So it's just like for me, I felt like I want to be able to have this conversation with them. I feel like it is a teaching moment. Like a lot of people go through this world not knowing, because they've never experienced it. They never come into contact with someone living through this experience. If you can teach them like at a young age and really expose them to these things or this ideas around like deconstructing gender, right, it really can change things. So for them, like I remember doing with them a lesson around gender, and we read a book about just like, it was literally a book that was accessible to them at 6 and 7 about like gender identities and the very ways that people can identify, and like people that identify as non-binary and people who are cisgender, and like all the different ways again that people can identify, even if they do like choose to identify as a boy or choose to identify as a girl. And like you explain that to them and it makes sense. Like for them, they're like, oh, okay, okay, cool, you know.
And for the people that
And
don't know,
like
cisgender is
cisgender is like when you identify as, when your gender matches the sex you were assigned at birth. So
gotcha.
if
All
you're
right.
assigned male at birth and you identify as male, you're cisgender, right? As opposed to transgender, where you might have been assigned a different sex or gender at birth, and it doesn't align, right?
Gotcha.
Um, so yeah, like it got to a point where like my first graders, they will be walking around connecting people on my pronouns. Like, you know what I'm saying? It actually is a lot
Yeah.
simpler than people think. Like there's, you go on Facebook and there's all these people up in arms around like, don't teach my kid that. I don't want my
Yeah.
kid learning about homosexuality. I don't want my kid learning about trans people. But it's not, we're not teaching them to be trans. We're not teaching them to be lesbian or to be gay, right? We're just teaching them that these things exist and you can respect it, right?
Yep.
Just
Yeah.
respect it. There's no need to have hate in your heart. If you can understand it and just expect that this, respect that this is how people choose to live. It doesn't have to be how you live, but let's understand it and respect it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And the
Um,
respect is the biggest thing.
and
Yep.
that's it. And like again, like I'm at a school now, like, and I feel like the more you do that, the more it allows kids to kind of be who they are. Like we have kids almost in every grade at my school that like are genderqueer, non-binary, or trans in almost every grade at my school. And like they're okay in it. They're, you know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? They're comfortable in it. It's a
Mm-hmm.
space where they could feel like they could at least walk around and navigate that safely, right?
Yeah.
You know, kids in like first grade, third grade, right? And those are things where like they don't know. They don't know who they are yet. But like as a teacher walking around seeing them, like it's a big difference when you allow them to be who they say they are.
Yeah.
It's a major difference. It's a difference in their how they show up academically, how they show up emotionally, how they show up mentally. Like it completely changes when you, in general, when you allow a child to be who they are, regardless if it's about gender or whatever else. It lifts them. You know what I'm saying? It
Yeah.
allows them to shine a light in who they are, and it definitely applies to their gender as well. Like if they're telling you like this is who I am, and people give them the space to be that, it is, if I would have had the opportunity as a kid, I don't know. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? How my life would have turned out. So like
Yeah.
imagine if you as a kid, like there were some things that you were going through and you decided like, yo, this is who I want to be. And from very early on, it was like, all right, cool.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna let you rock with that. It's a certain freedom you kind of get to live
Yeah.
with that a lot of us,
100%.
especially as Black queer people, didn't get, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. For you, I know you had mentioned you grew up in a church, which I think is probably the biggest catalyst for why people choose to have a delay in their coming of themselves, right? Um, for you, how was that journey? Uh, whether it was, facing your parents or, um, family members, what were some of those like highlight experiences? Obviously, starting with your parents, but then like, were there other people that you are like, man, I didn't expect that.
Nah, I ain't even gonna lie. It definitely took me a minute. It was rough to kind of like come out in general. But like, I don't know, at the same time, like I felt like y'all had to know. You know what I'm saying? Like, like you like at
The
some point
denial
it
be
had to
real.
click. Right? At some point it had to click.
It's a phase. She gonna
Nah,
be good. It's just a phase.
it don't be good. It don't be good. Nah, I don't know. I don't think any of it like
So when you had the conversation with your mom, were you lesbian? Like, did you
yeah,
say, "Hey, mom,
when I
I'm a
initially, yeah, that
yeah,
was like in high school. In high
mm-hmm,
school I came out as like lesbian and my mom and like 11th grade, 12th grade, like, and I think at that point for me, it was just overwhelming for me because I was just like, I just need to tell you the truth. Like, I don't want to lie about who I am. Like, I don't want to keep lying.
I
Like,
want to be like, mom, yeah, this my
that
this
don't
my
feel
friend,
good to
this my
me.
friend from school, like,
Like, I don't want to keep lying, man. So,
yeah,
like, I told her when I was like, yeah, high school. And like, she was cool with it. I think more than anything else, she was just afraid. Like,
mm-hmm,
like a lot of people don't take into account that, like, sometimes parents react inside of their fear of like being afraid for you, like, oh, you already
mm-hmm,
a Black child and now you're gonna come out and, you know what I'm saying, decide to be gay or decide to be lesbian. They fear like how the world's gonna treat you or like
mm-hmm,
how it's gonna be.
yeah,
And I think that was definitely a part of like her being her being afraid. The religion thing also comes into effect, like God, like what's right, what's not right, but also like my family, like I think in a lot of ways we just kind of like don't I don't want to say don't let the Bible get in the way, but like, I don't know, allowing people to be who they are without judging.
Mm-hmm.
Like, people all are on their own journey,
Mm-hmm.
and just
Yeah.
like trusting the fact that like God loves
Yeah.
either way. So yeah, I didn't like really get, I wasn't like disowned or anything. I think it was just like
Thank God for that.
right. Again, like I'm blessed inside of that.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. Did you feel like did you feel like once you came out that it was the response, the all the things that you might have thought were over exaggerated in your head, maybe? Like once you finally came out, it was like, oh, that was better than I
yeah, it
thought.
definitely
That didn't go that bad.
it wasn't as crazy as I thought it would be. But I
Yeah.
mean, it definitely was like still a slow process, because
Mm-hmm.
it's just like, again, you're still undoing who your parent thought you were going to be.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You're
Yeah.
slowly starting to be like, actually, nah, I don't want that. I don't want to do that. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Yeah, I'm lesbian, but also like, I don't want to wear that no more. Actually, I want to dress like this.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I want to be like this.
Yeah.
Actually, I want to cut my hair. Actually, I want. So it's just like undoing
Yeah.
every time of like, actually, this is who I want to be. Um,
Did you have to have conversations again? Because I think uh, for most people, that first conversation is just like, I'm gay, right? And then there's the
yeah,
for a transgender person, there's the second conversation of like, this is my these are my pronouns now. This is how I'm going to present now. And then if there's a drastic appearance change, obviously, then there's the okay, helping them to understand that part, right? So how for you, did you have another conversation with your mom about like, okay, I know that last conversation was I was a lesbian, but like now there's this, this
there's this,
transgender
yeah.
conversation that we have to have.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely was a whole other conversation. Again, a lot of therapy to get up to that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
But like my family, we do like a family. We got a family group chat. So it actually ended up being like a family group call where I told everybody at the same time, like, y'all, this is what's going on. This is who I am. This is what's about to happen. As it happens, you will see this change and this change and this change. And they asked me questions, and I was just
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so again, like, I'm blessed to have a family that I have. They're just trying to ask me questions and just simply trying to understand. By no means are they perfect, but I definitely like am grateful for the family that I have. And their
Yeah.
willingness to understand. Like, I'm in a group call, so my brother's like, so if I can't call you sis no more, what do I call you? You know what I'm saying? Like, just
Yeah.
honest questions, like shit for
Like,
people to, like, just like, I don't know if I can't call you that. I don't know what else to call you.
right.
Nah.
So since you identify, that's actually a good question. So like, since you identify as they, them versus he, is it the for your brother, like in that question, like what does he call you? Like, what do you tell him to call you?
So Sib, and short for sibling.
Okay.
So like,
Got it.
his wife used to call me Sissy, right? So now she just calls me Sibby. Like, he'd be like, "What's up, Sib?" You know what I'm saying? Or just use my name.
Yeah.
My aunt came up with the term Neefy, which is a combination of niece and nephew.
Mm-hmm.
Like, everybody, like, we've just found our small
Like, we
ways
just
to
gonna
kind of
have
try to
everybody
make
gonna
it
have a
work.
new nickname.
Everybody gonna have a nickname.
Yeah.
But yeah, I tell everybody though, in general, if all else fails, just call me by my name.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, cause I
Yeah.
get it, like, pronouns and changing the grammar and trying to make it fit in sentences is hard for people. So I was like,
Yeah.
if that's not where you're at in your journey, you can always just say Key. I
Yeah.
want to chill with Key. Key said blank, blank, blank. You know what I'm saying? If you don't know how to put it into the they, them.
Mm-hmm. Right. Because
It's
the
always
natural,
easy
yeah.
shortcut is go to the name.
Yeah, there you go. You're absolutely right. Absolutely. So then for you, with switching topics a little bit. So dating. So now you identify as they, them, and so you go into relationships or dating. What does that start to look like? Because what kind of conversations, if any at all, do you have? Is it a straight up, I'm a transgender um, woman, and then like there's another conversation? How does that look from a dating perspective? If there's a young lady out there right now that's transitioning, and now she's um, identifies as either they, them, or he, and is going into the dating scene, Like, how does that look? And is it different than being just lesbian, right? Is it different?
I mean, it does come with a difference because again, like people have like people have their sexualities for a reason. So people are attracted to who they're attracted to for a reason. So like for me, I had to undo like what my norm was gonna be as like the moment that I decide the moment that I transitioned and identified as non-binary, of course it changed my dating life in the sense of like I no longer can live inside of the lesbian dating pool, right? Because women who are attracted to women, it's going to be a little different for me because I don't live inside of that womanhood in the way that like other women are looking for, right? You know what I'm saying? Like
Mm-hmm.
me as a non-binary trans person isn't the same as like a dom or a masculine woman. You know what I'm saying? So like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I can't always assume, walk into a space, I don't assume, even if I'm walking into a queer space, a lesbian space, I don't assume that like that, you know what I'm saying, that a
Yeah.
woman will be attracted to me in that way.
Yeah.
Because now I am like masculine presenting and like sometimes I do read off as male. So like if I'm in a lesbian space, I'm not gonna
Mm-hmm.
not everybody's gonna come my way.
Mm-hmm.
But so for me, like when I'm looking to date someone, I'm more so looking for people who are probably pansexual or just kind of open
Mm-hmm.
to dating people in general. Um, I honestly, beyond the labels, I just hope that someone would like just be interested in me from just talking to me and getting to
Right.
know me. Like if we have a person to person conversation, then that's fine. Like the person that I'm with, like it just started as us kind of dating as people, and I was just like, hey, I'm non-binary, I'm trans, and she was like, well, I don't actually know. You know what I'm saying? Like what that is going to mean for us. She was like, I know I've dated different people. And I was just like, well, I mean, we could just, she's like, I'm interested in you. So let's just try and
Mm-hmm.
figure it out for you. And like, that's how I like to keep it. Like, if you're interested in me, just be interested in me. Like, we don't even have to live inside the labels and everything else. Like, on
Yeah.
a person to person basis,
Yeah.
are we interested in each other? Do we want to date each other and let it live inside of that? Yeah, but dating is definitely different.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely different. I can't, because we like live in this like male dominated like patriarchal society, and I transitioned into like masculine presenting, male presenting, like I gotta reshift the way in which I carry myself, you know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? Like before, me walking up to a girl and saying, hey, how you doing, reads a little different now. You know what I'm saying? With
Mm-hmm.
me saying, walking up to a girl saying, hey, how you doing? Like women are so used to being pestered by men and harassed by men when they're out. Like when I walk around presenting as male, I could be just another person that they're you know what I'm saying,
Yeah. Yeah.
perceiving as that. So it's like
And they assign all
I
those
kind of
things
gotta
that they
change.
had about
Yeah,
a man to you,
to
but that's
me.
not you. Yeah.
Exactly. So it's like I gotta move a little different sometimes. And even I'm still learning. I don't have the
Mm-hmm.
cheat code. Somebody watching right now, don't hit me up because I don't have the cheat code. But it's a learning experience, and you learn as it go. All I can do is really just kind of walk into a space and stay firm inside of being me,
Yeah.
and then seeing where that takes me.
Yeah. No, that's awesome, man. So then the last thing I wanted to just, touch on is like, in general, right? So what's some of the what are some of the best things that you've taken from your journey that can help someone who's going through their own journey right now?
Therapy first and foremost. Nah, but also like my therapist reminds me this all the time, just to be patient with yourself, give yourself grace. Like even inside of me knowing that this is I'm becoming, you know what I'm saying, or I am, this is me stepping inside of who I am, it's still hard. It's still, again, like just like it's undoing for the people that have known me, it's me undoing who I've known myself to be. It's me allowing myself to release a lot of the constructs that I put on myself.
Hmm.
Right. So you just gotta be patient with yourself, kind of give yourself some grace. Um, but also like find community. I think that's one thing that like I'm still working on. It's just trying to find community and surround yourself with community, invest in the community, right? It's what yesterday was Trans Day of Remembrance. Like
Hmm.
trans women out here they're getting murdered like at an
Mm-hmm.
alarming rate. You know what I'm saying? And so like, who am I? You know, not who am I, but like, I acknowledge my privilege in this situation, and so like, at some point, I would say at some point, like I have to stand up, and I got to get the people around me to stand up for the people that need it most. Like queer people are always in the front lines,
Yeah,
you know, standing up
100%.
for everybody else. So like, find that community, investing in community is big. Like cis, trans, if not, like there's a time, and I think right now is a time where like people really do need to step up and to shift their eyes to that and see what they can do for it right now, and really lift up trans women and see how we can all protect them as a community. Um, and there's not a lot of people doing that right now. I think as a unit, like even inside the queer community, like if we could all just like shift our attention to that for a little bit. Not that we aren't, but like really like boost that up, because you don't want you don't want people walking around like they're forgotten. And a lot of
Yeah.
times like their stories are forgotten because like the trans women's humanities are just being denied again and again and again and again. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like as me being trans masculine, my experience is different.
Yeah.
It doesn't come without its own weights, but I also understand that my experience is different than that. So even in my like, I appreciate you coming and giving me this voice, but like even inside of this, like I'm privileged in this conversation I get to have and the safety that I get to have.
Yeah.
Um, and so like I just want to take a moment to acknowledge that. And again, like pushing myself to be invested in the community, find community, and figure out how I can give back, how I can step up, how I can lend my voice or lend my body or lend whatever I have to really like fight, you know what I'm saying,
Yeah.
for what's just and fight for what's right.
No, absolutely.
For
I
people
think
to
this,
simply live for being who they are.
yeah,
Like
just for
all people are doing, all
trying to
people are fighting
exist
for is
happily.
just to exist and live,
Yep,
right?
and be
Like
happy,
and be happy.
because
And I
that's the
think
goal.
that's it.
Ultimately, it's happiness. Everyone's trying to find that for themselves.
Yeah.
Everyone's
And
trying to
so
find that.
next time you run into somebody who like really just going off on like trans people that really don't get it, it's like just ask them like, are you really asking someone to deny themselves their happiness to please you and what you think is right for them? Like you want people to live their life to please you over doing what they need to do to take care of themselves? Like
Hmm.
you gotta step outside of that. Like
Yeah,
no
because
one's
at the
gonna
end of the day, you realize that for most people who have that those opinions, it's just they're uncomfortable with it. They're just it's just something that's so uncomfortable for people to get an understanding of, right? It's like it's even great that you said like kids are so much easier because the older we get, the less agile we are about learning, right? So when you get those responses from people, it's really just a lack of understanding and sometimes a lack of willingness to understand. Um, and so, we understand that that's just, a little bit of an ignorant perspective, but we're, as a community, I think just trying to do things like this, right, where people share their human experiences that it's more than just you just see what you see and then think that it makes you uncomfortable, but this is a real person, right? This is a person who is trying to exist and ultimately be happy as you are, or uh hopefully even more happy, right? And so yeah, it's definitely important to highlight those types of things. So
Mm,
100%. But
I appreciate that.
no, for sure, man, I thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me out.
100%.
Appreciate
This
it.
is Key. Thank you guys for tuning into another episode of the Queerly Blax Show.